Starting. Okay, looks like we're live. There we go. Well, I'd like to welcome everybody back to the second week of our story building, and we're going to continue on from what we started last week. I think last week we started a pretty good foundation. It's kind of like maybe one block. It's not the whole foundation by any means, but kind of like one block, one or two blocks of it. And we're going to go ahead and carry on from there. And I've got a really cool idea. I'm excited about it just to see where this next chapter can start. And we're going to need your all's help on how it progresses. So again, my name's David McCaleb, my daughter Abigail, and I need some names, and we're just actually Googling some names. Matthew, or Mikal, as we called him, his Viking name, Mikal. He's Helfton. You like that one better?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do Helfton. So we'll do Trifing and Helfton. You're going to have to help me remember these. And here's what happens. Matthew, Mikal, we got to develop him a little bit. And I think what I'm going to try to weave into the story is Matthew, before he's Mikal, is he's somewhat reserved. He's uncertain of himself. He's a little bit self-conscious and not as outgoing as he wishes he was. He is not comfortable talking with women. He is, he's young still. I mean, I would say, how old do you want him to be? Maybe about 15 or so. 16. Yeah, it might be more interesting actually if he was a little older, if he was like 16. So we'll do that, 16, 17, somewhere around there. So I think we can make that work. And he's not all that athletic, although he has some potential there. He's just never really developed it. So he's, he just kind of is he's still in the kind of the gawky adolescent stage of his life. And now, well, we'll get into the story of how he progresses here, but this is where we're going to start. Because if you remember last time, where we ended up was Mikal had gone essentially into this tent. It was the sail draped over the boat. Had gone into the tent. All the guys were sleeping. Some were on the floor. Some were on their benches. It's raining pretty hard outside. And Top Knot, and what's Top Knot's name?
Halfton.
Halfton was talking with someone, down at the other end. Anyway, Mikal, he sits down on his bench. He lays down. It's hard, but yet, as we talked about last time, it's familiar to him. It's like his body just knows it. And even as he lays back, even though he's cold, it doesn't bother him like he thinks that it should. So that's where we left off. So now, new chapter. Matthew, he tries to sit up, but he can't. And the sun is directly overhead, and it's warm on his forehead. It's actually hot on his forehead. He has to squint. He's at the beach. He opens up his eyes, and he kind of has to blink a little bit and shake his head just to kind of get a little bit of sand out of him. He's at the beach. Alrighty, you guys. We just had a little technical blip there, but it still says we're broadcasting, so we're good. Thanks to Google, we're still okay. Alrighty. So where was I? So he was patting, his sister was patting the sand around his feet, and he kind of wiggled. He recognizes that he's in a dream, and so then he lays his head back down in the sand, and he loves his sister. His sister's awesome, but she's, like we talked about last time, kind of the yin to his yang. She's more outgoing than he, and more risk taking. And he's more reserved, and he kind of looks over to one side, and there's, he sees the sunbathers and people down, and then he looks over to the other side, and he sees a couple girls approaching that are walking down. He's looking at the waves coming in on let's say he's at Assateague. That's like the beach that I know. So in other words, he's at Assateague, and he sees a couple girls from his class coming toward, at least across where walking along the beach, lots of people, and he's like, oh my goodness, maybe they won't see me. And so he's kind of got his eyes closed, but he's like peering, he's like got him slit open, so he's kind of looking, and he's got his sister's still down there, and he's thinking, this is kind of embarrassing. I'm sitting here playing with my little sister. And there are two girls. There's one of them in particular that he's always been attracted to, and what can her name be? I hate all this name stuff. This isn't a Viking name. We better not have her.
That's what I'm looking at.
We'll call her Lisa. Nah, it's boring. We'll call her Ashley. Ashley's a good name. Okay. So there's Ashley, and they're walking, and he's kind of peering through slit eyes at his sister sitting there dumping yet more sand down near his feet, and Ashley kind of does glance over and says, oh hey Matthew, and just kind of keeps walking with her friend. He didn't recognize the friend. He didn't know who that was, but Matthew opens up his eyes and and greets her and says hello, and that's about it. And they just keep on walking. So that's all it was. And he kind of kicks himself for not, even though he knows he's in a dream, he kind of kicks himself for not saying something else. And then the waves are actually pretty rough today. It's a clear day. It's a hot day, but the waves are pretty rough. And his sister says, hey, I'm going to go. She grabs a boogie board that they brought, and she says, okay, I'm going to go in the water. And Matthew realizes, and just it hits him that today is the day, in his dream now, that she's lost. Today is the last day that he sees his sister. That when she goes out into the water, there was a day just like this. He remembers that it was a day where he was at the beach, and that she was covering him with sand, and he had actually just taken a nap for a second, and he lifted up his head and he couldn't see her. He didn't know where she was. But the boogie board was washed up a little ways further, and he says, you can't. He says, no. What's his sister's name? It needs to be something with kind of like fiery, it needs to be a good name. So we've got Ashley is a girl he's attracted to. We need another girl name. Something, well, we won't dwell on it, but his sister is, let's call her Victoria. Vicky. Nah, she doesn't like Vicky. She hates Vicky. No. We already gave her a name. It was Tabitha. That's right. And Tabby, and he called her Gabby. So Gabby gets up, and she goes, you're just chicken. Remember, that's what she called him last time. And she takes the boogie board, and she runs out into the surf, and he tries to sit up, but he can't because of all this weight on his chest. And he tries, and he sits up, and a skin falls off of his chest. He's back in the boat, and he's sweating, though it's cold. And he thinks, my goodness, am I still dreaming? He was expecting maybe to be back up in Maine, where they were vacationing. Maybe is he still dreaming? But once the skin, and he doesn't remember putting the skin. It's some white skin of an animal. It's a dog of some sort, maybe a fox, and falls off of his chest down onto his lap. And he's breathing heavy, and he's sweating, though he's cold. And the man lying next to him, remember the guy that didn't have a pinky? He's lying on his side on the bench next to him, and he opens up an eye, and he goes, "You have a dream?" And then he opens up the other eye. He goes, "By the looks of it, it might have been a vision, maybe." And Mikau says, "No, it was just a dream." And the other man, I gotta see if I can get a different voice inflection so you guys know which guy I'm talking about now. What's this? We'll have to be looking for names because we're going to have to give him another name. So anyway, he opens up his eyes and he says, "Was it? Did you? What? Did you see? Was it angels or demons that you saw?" And he goes, "No, it was just a dream. I was just at the beach. I was at the beach with my sister." And the man smirks and he goes, "Oh, demons then." And Mikau kind of shakes his head and says, "No, no, my sister, she's dead." And now the other man sits up. He goes, "You did see a vision then?" "What do you mean?" "No, I didn't see a vision. It was just a dream that I had, and I have it sometimes. It's actually more of a nightmare." He said, "And your sister dies in it?" And he said, "Well, she did die." He goes, "Well, your sister then is a vision." He said, "What are you talking about?" And the other man goes, "Your sister's as live as you are." He's like, "No, no, not that sister, my other sister." And he goes, "Mikau, you confuse me more than you did when we were growing up." Mikau lays back down. So does the other man. And he looks over at him and he goes, "Who am I?" And the other man smirks and he goes, "I'm still trying to figure out the same thing." And Mikau says, "No, really, who am I?" And the man he kind of furrows his brow and he looks over at him and he sits back up, turns his legs around on his bench, and he grabs his jaw and he goes, "I think that oar didn't just beat your jaw. Did it hit your head?" And he kind of turns his head one way or the other, looking to see if he can see a bruise. But Mikau, when he's doing this, his jaw is aching awfully bad because the oar did smack him in his jaw, but nothing hit his head that he can remember. And he goes, "Mikau, do you remember who I am?" And Mikau says, "No, I don't. I don't remember who you are." And the other man, he smiles and he says, I don't know what he says. He says, "Do you remember?" He goes, "This happened." He lays back down. He kind of breathes out. And he goes, "This happened once before to you." And he looks over. He goes, you cannot mention this to anybody. So you are not, what you're saying to me is you're not Mikau." And the guy, and Mikau goes, "No, I'm not. My name's Matthew." But when he says Matthew, it comes out. He can hear it with his ears, but it comes out Mikau. And he goes, "Yes, that's what I said. You are Mikau." No, they're saying no. There's confusion in between them as to what he's trying to say. And the other man, he goes, "I am your friend. I am." And what's his name? Tryphon. That's what it was. Okay, so Tryphon, This other man's name is Trifing, and he tells Mikal that this happened one time before, but it was only once, and when he was really young. For like an entire week, Mikal was someone else, and Mikal goes, "Well, who was I?" And Trifing shook his head, and he goes, "I don't know." He said, I made an excuse for you. It happened one time, and we were out in the fields actually." And he goes, "You turned around. No, you weren't doing anything. You turned around. You were harvesting. Well, they were farmers. Vikings were farmers. So let's say wheat. So he was harvesting wheat, and he goes, you turned around and you knew not who you were. And I made up an excuse for you. I said that you had gotten hit on the head when you tripped. You hit your head on a rock, and but everyone else thought it was the curse from thought your mother had cursed you somehow, and I made up an excuse for you, and I said that you hit your head on a rock, and that after a week or so you were back." And he goes, "Well, who are you this time?" And he says, and he starts to think back. He goes back to his dream, and he says, I'm not from here. I'm not from this time. I'm from a time that I think it's in the future, and but I don't know where we are now, so I can't really say. And so you're saying I have a sister now? And he says, yes, she's alive, just as alive as you and me. And he smirks and he says, and she's got hair as red as the copper on your chest. And Mikal kind of looks at his chest, and there's some sort of, I don't know, what do you want it, like a copper, like he's got on a strap of leather, he's got a copper something or another there. Because they used copper back then. I know that was one of the things that they traded, copper and silver. Thank goodness for Google. You can Google all these things. And so what ends up happening is you've got this and he thinks, and he's like, I have a sister, and Trifing kind of explains, well, Trifing's the guy without the pinky now. He says, yeah, your sister, and they're all doing all this. They've got to do this in hushed tones because everybody else is sleeping, so they're kind of whispering this. And so Trifing is explaining to him how his sister is, who his sister, and actually Trifing's kind of got has always been attracted to his sister, but his sister's crazy. His sister is always running through the woods, talking to the, Trifing talks about how she's, he's been attracted to her, but she's always been running through the woods, talking to like animals. But the tribe, the clan, I guess the Vikings would call them, puts up with it because his mother, Mikal's mother, is kind of the holy person. She's the one that talks to the gods. She's very sensitive to the gods, and has actually saved their clan on a couple times, warning them of upcoming storms. And she had actually blessed their voyage before they had gone, and said that Thor was going to give them good, favorable winds. And Mikal says, well, he certainly didn't give us favorable winds. I mean, when I remember us almost sinking under the wrath of that storm. And Trifing says, or maybe those are the favorable winds that he wanted us to have to get us down here. It only took us, we were rowing for a day, and that storm came up, and then we were rowing for another day after that, and we know not how much ground we covered as of yet, but it was a long way with that storm behind us, pushing us ahead of it. And so maybe that's what Thor wanted us. And so you found this shelter for us. Anyway, so that's where we're at right now. So we've got Trifing, his friend. We've got Mikal, who has a sister, Matthew, who Mikal used to be. Matthew, his sister had died. Mikal has a sister who, oddly enough, has red hair, just as his sister did. And he puts that in the back of his mind, thinking maybe there's some sort of connection there. And we got to kind of build the plot just a little bit, you guys, because all we're doing right now is just sitting around talking. And that may be what this chapter's about. I don't know. We got to build something. But there's what happens is he asks, Mikal asks Trifing, what are we doing here? And why are we down here? What's going on? And I say down here, it comes out in the conversation that they did come from the north, and it was only a couple of days' journey, as we just talked about. But they're down there for why? And Trifing explains that the daughter of the chieftain was kidnapped. So the daughter of the chieftain was kidnapped by some of the locals, the local Indians. And the local Indians had migrated from the north down. They knew that they migrated. They migrated north during the summertime and then south during the wintertime. And so they knew that they had migrated south. And they were north. It was only a couple weeks ago that she was kidnapped. And she was kidnapped for oh, I got it. Let's do this. She was kidnapped, and the whole red hair thing, let's do this. She was kidnapped by the locals because she was extraordinarily fair-skinned and red hair, and the locals had superstitions, even a prophecy that a prophetess would come that matched her description. Okay, so they ended up kidnapping the chieftain's daughter. Okay. So the whole red hair thing, Mikal's sister, let's forget about the whole red hair thing. Let's apply the red hair thing to the chieftain's daughter. Okay, so Mikal still has a sister, and Trifing is still, attracted to her and all that good stuff, but she's blonde. Okay, let's do the red hair thing. Let's connect that with the chieftain's daughter instead. And so these people, these locals, had kidnapped her, and they think that they've actually migrated south. And so what the chieftain did, and the chieftain's name is Leif Erikson, and that's historically accurate because Leif Erikson actually was the chieftain of a clan that landed up in Labrador, up in Canada. And so it is documented that the Vikings did make it as far as Labrador. And so his daughter was kidnapped, and so their mission was to go down and actually try to find where she was. And so they had taken their men in a boat to try to get ahead of, or maybe overtake, the migrating locals. And so that's kind of what the plot is. Okay. And I haven't thought too much more about it. So you guys are going to have to kind of think what happens next. I'm not going to, like I say, last time we laid a good foundation. Now we've got another block or two as far as the foundation goes. So we know what they're supposed to be doing. We've got some more that we can build upon, definitely. But now you guys got to think of a couple things. Number one, we need to develop Mikal a little bit more. And so we need some scenes and on where he's going to his personality is going to be developed. So like you're this party, you're coming down, you're going into this new area that you have not been before. And so now you got to figure out how are you going to try to find these migrating, these folks who are walking down, who are making their way down from the north. And how are you going to find them? How are you going to track them down? What are your needs? I mean, you got to stay warm. You got to stay fed. These are Vikings, so I know that they took along some provisions for the journey. But you got to kind of think about things like that, and in those actions, in those, like as they're trying to find food or clean water or whatever these things are. I know food shouldn't be too much of a problem because the wildlife was all around them, but you know, portions of the different personalities and the development of the characters can start coming out. But we need, like in a story, usually you have where things progress, and then something fails, and things progress, and then it fails again, and then things progress, and it finally wins. So it's kind of like you got to kind of think about where you know, we don't want to just make this a short story where it automatically goes through and everybody's happy and they find the, you know, find the missing daughter or something. There's also some more complicating issues. You know, you've got his mother, who is a you know, a witch doctor basically, and how does Mikhail think about that? I mean, does he? I don't know. Maybe there's. Abby brought up a really good point yesterday. I thought was great that we can weave into it, and that's how, you know, Mikhail's got all this strength in this body that he's never had before. What else might be in that body, like automatic muscle memory? Like maybe he knows, even though he's never fought before. Maybe he knows, like, the sword feels familiar in his hand. Maybe there's certain things that come naturally to him now that didn't come naturally to him, you know, as he's sitting fat and happy on a beach in Aztec, you know. So it's, you think about stuff like that. Anyway, post your thoughts on in first class. I'm looking forward to it. We really need your all's input, and this is your all's story, so take it where you want it to go. But I need your input to be able to continue on. I appreciate it. And we're going to keep it a little bit shorter this time, and hope you enjoyed it. Alrighty, talk to you later.